I know Ibu Julia was not very well yesterday. I think she's coming. Hello.
Well, what the hell is going on?
You like to sit there?
It's not in the normal way.
Never mind. Never mind. You made it.
Yeah, maybe. Thank God I was half dressed.
Okay. Our speaker has arrived. Welcome, everybody. This is one of the sessions in the Zoominar series on language, society, and education, which we've been running for three semesters now. And I'm very happy that my neighbor, Ibu Julia, has been able to join us. I'll invite Dedi, Director of Pascasarjana, to open the session. Dedi?
Okay, thank you, Howell.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Good afternoon, all Zoominar participants, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 10th International Zoominar series conducted by postgraduate of Universitas Negeri Jakarta. Program aims to discuss and share with you current issues on language, society, and education. As Mr. Howell Coleman said in the introduction, amongst our postgraduate student, teaching staff, and international researchers. This international program, along with other programs, is part of our commitment to pursue our vision to become the center of education based on postgraduate research reputable in Asia. This is in line with our university vision in reputable university Asia region. On this afternoon seminar, we invite Mrs. Zulia Kusuma, founder of the Gender and Democracy Center in Indonesia. She will share with us the topic of from state IBUISM, the reform era to the Gender Democracy Center, the birth, death, rebirth of the Indonesian woman development. I believe this topic will enlighten our perspective on gender equality and democracy, of course, which are very important aspects of all countries in the world. On behalf of postgraduate, I would like to thank and appreciate the speaker, Mrs. Julia Kusuma, to Professor Arita Marini, Dr. Faisal Madani, and Howell Coleman, who are tirelessly run this program. I hope you enjoy this afternoon international Zoominar, take academic benefits from this event. Finally, I'd like to invite our Honorable Rector of Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Professor Dr. Komarudin, to officially open this session. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Prof. Arita.
Mbak Putri. Halo, Mbak Putri. Mbak Putri.
Mas Lutfi, can you play the video?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Speaker of this Zoominar program, Ibu Julia Surya Kusuma, from GDC Indonesia, Professor Dedi Purwana, the Director of Postgraduate Program and the Board of Vice Director, lecturers, and all students of postgraduate program. I am pleased to welcome you at this monthly Zoominar program with a very interesting topic. From the state of IBUISM, the reform era of the GDC, the birth, death, and rebirth of the Indonesian women movement. Unlike other topics in the previous webinar, I believe this topic is very special. Usually, the topic relates to linguistic and language study. Now it is different. We have a very special speaker, Ibu Julia Surya Kusuma, who has put keen interest in the topic of IBUISM and gender equality. She has conducted research on this topic for her thesis, although in my understanding, it took very long time to complete. Ladies and gentlemen, regarding this, I'd like to say something as follows. Gender equality education must start from early childhood education to higher education. In this case, universities are at the forefront in disseminating gender equality education in order to create harmonious life order in society. UNJ has long been concerned and paid great attention to gender equality. In the Research Center for Education, Teacher Training and Women Studies, LPPM UNJ, we have conducted a lot of research, publication, and at the same time empowering gender equality education. With today's webinar, by presenting an extraordinary speaker, gender expert, and winner of the Order of the Crown Awards, Mrs. Julia Surya Kusuma is expected to further broaden the knowledge about the importance of gender equality and justice, especially in higher education. On behalf of UNJ, I appreciate this event, and hopefully in the future we can work together in a more concrete and fruitful direction. Ladies and gentlemen, especially lecturers and students of postgraduate program, please enjoy this webinar. I am very sure you can take benefit from it. As request to open this Zoominar with your permission, I declare this Zoominar officially open. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pak Rector, Pak Dedi. We're now going to try to share screen with Ibu Julia's PowerPoint. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes,
Hello?
I will.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes, I will.
Okay. Okay. Julia.
Shall I sit here?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon. There was a little bit of a panic just now because I couldn't get into the Zoom for some reason. It was just because I thought it would be just normal, 10 minutes before before 4, I thought I'd go in, and I just couldn't get in. And luckily, I and Pak are neighbors, so he said, "Can you come over?" And so it's a good thing I was half dressed. I only had to change my shorts to my skirt. So here I am. So without further ado, I think I will just start. Will somebody help me to do the slides? Yeah. Is somebody helping me to do this? The slides?
I think you have to do it yourself.
I have to do it myself?
Yeah.
Oh, do you know how to do it?
Yeah, just go. Where are we?
How do you
Mbak
do
Ida?
it?
Mbak Ida, would you please help her?
Is some Yeah, can somebody help me to do the?
Mr. Hywell,
They don't have it.
You can click the enable
will.
editing. Enable editing. You can click the enable editing.
Where is that?
On the top of your
At
On
the
the top.
on
On the top.
At the top of your
On
PPT.
the top of your PPT.
Which one? Press which one?
enable editing.
Enable editing.
Enable editing.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
At the
Just
top.
click that on the
Yeah,
top.
yeah.
Oh, there it is. There it is. This is not my
Yeah,
my laptop, so I don't know how to do it.
My laptop.
Yeah, I know. So you have to do it.
Okay.
Right. Oh, okay. As the shared window is closed, it says.
Right. Let me try again. Okay.
Do you have it?
Yes,
Can you
yes.
see?
Yes, it's
Right.
great.
Yes, it's ready, sir.
So you can see. We have to, but I have to do it myself.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Just slide show the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
How do you?
Could you please to have it share screen to full screen. I
Yes,
mean
for sure.
to full screen.
Yeah.
I will. You can send it to Baidam, and
Minute.
Baidam will do it for her.
Yeah, why don't you just send it to forward it to them?
I don't know her email address.
What about her WhatsApp address?
You can send it to me.
Can you give your WhatsApp address, please? The number, sorry.
Okay. Can you see this?
There,
full
yeah,
screen
yeah.
now?
Yes, yes.
That's good. Great.
Yes, it's already full screen.
Okay.
Okay,
So just page down, page down.
oh, page down, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, here we are. Let's go. Let's try again. So I had no idea. This has never happened before. So thank you very much for the introduction. And I understand I have an hour. I will set 40 minutes for the presentation and 20 for the Q&A. So the title of my presentation is called State IBUISM Reform or Era to the GDC. Oops. Oh, sorry. Oh. Okay. So I'm giving a little bit of it's actually not an abstract, it's fine, since it was very much part of the nationalist movement, and it played an active role in Indonesia's struggle for independence. In the New Order, a military-led, the New Order that was from 1966 to 1998, which was a military-led authoritarian regime. The vibrant women's movement was shackled, rendered powerless, and by the depoliticization and state control over society. Now, state IBUISM is my study of the New Order gender ideology at the start of the reform era, which is from 1998 to now. This movement experienced vital, but it has become increasingly sophisticated and strong, but also getting constant backlash from conservative forces. I would also like to give a little introduction to my new Gender and Democracy Center. So I don't know how old most of the people are in the audience, but in the New Order, which started in 1966 to 1998. It was a repressive military regime led by General Suharto, who was the ruler of Indonesia for actually 32 years. It was often called a developmentalist authoritarian. which prioritized economic development, political control, and repression. The Communist Indonesian Communist Party, or the PKI, was the largest communist party in a non-communist nation, and it experienced. Hi, well, can you come here for a minute? Can you close this, please? Can you close this? Do you know how to close that? Because I can't see the whole text. There. Minimize. There. Okay. Thank you. Yes, as I was saying, the Indonesian Communist Party was the largest communist party in a non-communist country, and it was annihilated, 500,000 massacred, at least, maybe a lot more. It was called the mass killings of 1965-66, or also the Indonesian genocide, a very black mark on our history, where there was a massive and violent cleanup of the left and suspected sympathizers, not necessarily communists, actually communists, just sympathizer. And besides, it wasn't not allowed to be communist at that time. The communist scare was kept alive to justify continued repression and military dominance. So the new order was held up by the dual function of the military and territorial commands, whereby a military structure paralleled the civilian state bureaucracy. The state was considered a family, quote unquote. It was patriarchal, elitist, and very centralized. There's supposed to be a balance between the three powers, executive, judicative, and legislative, but it was very much dominated by the executive, i.e. the presidency. And it kept control, the state kept control over people through paternalism, to indoctrination, by cooptation, control, coercion, repression, and extrajudicial killings. There was a multi-party system at the time before the new order, but it was all the parties were put into three state-controlled parties: the PDI, which is accommodated the nationalist parties supposedly, and also some Catholic parties, and then the PPP, which accommodated the Islamic parties, and the Golkar, which was not a party. It was a functional group of the military, but it became the state party. Elections were held every 5 years, but they were just a farce, really. As Golkar always won, and Suharto was always re-elected. To further control the society, corporatist single vehicles were created: SBSE for laborers, and then for farmers, for fisherfolk, for journalists, for youth, for teachers, and for women. So when with regards to the gender ideology, it was epitomized by the Korpri and Dharma Wanita. Korpri is the civil servants' corps, i.e. the mainly men, and the Dharma Wanita, who were the wives of the civil servants. So this created this Bapaism, Ibuism ideology, actually. So it wasn't just Ibuism. Bapa is father and Ibu is mother. The Korpri was actually a politicization and control of civil servants. They had to vote for Golkar. The Dharma Wanita, the civil servants' wives organization, experienced a functionalization. In the past, the head of the Dharma Wanita was elected, but now the positions were automatically given based on the position of their husband's position in the bureaucracy. In 1978, a women's ministry was set up to implement women in development policies and programs in line with the New Order development authoritarianism. Kowani, the corporatist organization for women's groups, was dominated by Dharma Wanita and Dharma Pertiwi, which is the military wives organization. To further control society, a floating mass was created. The floating mass policy was created, whereby no political activity was allowed at the village or village and grassroots level. So, grassroots movements were suppressed. The New Order signaled a serious setback for women's movement. And this was, of course, the state of the women's movement was a reflection of the general political developments in New Order. They're always saying, the government officials are always saying, women has the same right as women, but don't forget their kodrat, their role as housewives and mothers. And this created an implicit subordination of women. Kodrat means destiny or nature, and it's a biological reductionism. So that women are essentially inferior to men, so they have to follow the men. The creation of the Dharma Wanita phenomenon coincided with the rise of the military bureaucracy. Now, that's probably the most important statement of this slide. State IBUISM is was my MA thesis, which I completed in 1988, which it's about the social construction of a New Order Indonesia. That's actually the subtitle. It was published as a bilingual book only in 2011, and but it has been considered a classic for over 30 years because after when it was still a thesis, it was unbeknownst to me, it was photocopied a lot, and I only found out 20 years after it was published, after the thesis was completed, that it was considered a classic, and it took me by surprise. I didn't even know about it. And then it was reprinted in the 2011 edition was bilingual, and it was reprinted in 2021 as just in Indonesian. It was the first gender analysis of the New Order. Gender ideology was implemented from the central to the village level. State IBUISM is actually about the state control of society, and women are just a case study. But they are a very important case study because women make up 50% of the populace, as we know. State IBUISM is the offshoot of Pancasila, the state ideology, which was tailored to meet the needs of the New Order. So Pancasila was originally created as, or dug up, as they like to say, by Sukarno, our first president and proclamator of independence, to serve as a means to build a new independent nation. But in the New Order, it became a tool for repression. So what happened was a systemic subordination of women. State IBUISM as a theory is based on Maria Mies' housewiveization, which is basically a class analysis. It's derived from a Western idea of the men as wage worker and the wife as who stays at home. Production and reproductive. The division of the private and public spheres, and where women are housewiveized, meaning they don't get paid for the work that they do, which is essential for capitalism. Now, Madlan Jayadiningrat's IBUISM is more of a cultural analysis, and it's derived from Javanese feudalism. And Michael van Langenberg is it's too complicated to explain here, but it's order. State IBUISM ideology embodied in the 5 principles of Dharma Wanita, whereby women are loyal companions of the husband, women are procreators for the nation, women are educators and guides of children, women as regulators of the household, and only then women as useful members of the community or of society. Essentially, state IBUISM was a fascistic and defining. It was very similar to the kindergarten, children, church, and kitchen, which existed in fascist Germany, indigenous to their hands and had no autonomy or agencies. So dependency became an ideal. So what about single women, widows or divorcees, and LGBTIQ women? They just didn't exist, you know. They do exist, but they were not taken into consideration at all. So Dharma Wanita epitomized state IBUISM ideology, which it exists from the central to the sub-district level. And from the village level down is the PKK, Family Welfare Guidance for Village Women, which is part of the PKK was part of the village level state apparatus. So it was a vehicle, the PKK was a vehicle to filter down the ideology of state IBUISM to the village level. The PKK was founded in 1957, and it was just about home economics to make women, just, you know, like the Western notion of home economics. But in the new order, it became a tool of state control. And in fact, PKK acted as mediators of state paternalism. The P4, the Pancasila indoctrination course, which was created in the new order in 1982, which was created for civil servants, but not just civil servants. It became widespread in the end. Was placed as number 1 in the 10 programs of the PKK. The other PKK programs were mutual self-help, nutrition, clothing, home economics, domestic planning, education, primary healthcare, cooperatives, and the environment. So, you know, they sound pretty useful, but with the P4 at the top, then it's still a tool for indoctrination. So PKK was called a movement, but it was anything but, because the head of the PKK was actually the president of the Republic of Indonesia. Can you imagine? This is a women's organization, supposedly, but it's headed by a man. The directives and funding were from the central level, i.e. from Jakarta, with very complex administrative requirements. The PKK was the primary channel for new order programs for women and the sole mediating body between the state and village women. PKK, what it mediated was the state authoritarian power through social, cultural, ideological, political spheres. State IBUISM was considered a subversive study. It was conducted in the early 1980s, or mid 1980s. I actually did the field research in 1984, which was the heyday of the New Order. And the Dharma Wanita and PKK were the New Order pet projects.
Pak Idam?
Gangguan jaringan, Prof.
Pak Idam?
down. Oops.
Yeah, why are you doing that? I can do that.
Okay.
Just let me do that. You don't know where I was at. Okay. Okay. So let's try again. I'm trying to minimize the this. I know I don't know how to operate this. Can you
have to move it in.
just minimize this?
Yeah.
The cursor is already there. Okay, thank you. Sorry for this. Technology, we've become so dependent on it that we become victims of it. So anyway, I just said that it's a subversive study and it doesn't really help village, especially poor women at all. Okay, but even though state IBUISM was the gender ideology in the order, it has a continued relevance. And public discourse on institutions in Indonesia have shifted significantly since state IBUISM was first written in the mid-1980s. But the mechanisms and outcomes of control are still strikingly similar. Gender is still essentially a mobilizing force for programmatic intervention and social control, or neglect, as in the case of migrant domestic workers, so we call the TKW here. Despite everything that has happened, women are still objects socially constructed to fit within a certain hierarchical and patriarchal order. Since the beginning of the reform era, Indonesia has become more dominated by Islamists. And women are controlled in a similar way. So maybe now it should be called Islamist IBUISM. So before, in the new order, women had to wear uniforms, like the state Ibu, the Dharma Wanita women had to wear these peach uniforms, and now everybody is forced to wear a jilbab. Not everybody is forced, but many are. Okay, so now we go into we enter the reform era, which supposedly starts in 1998 up to now, question mark. So the new order officially came to an end when Suharto stepped down in May 1998 due to a monetary crisis in 97, followed by a crisis total crisis in the socio-political field. It was expected to be transition from 32 years of military dictatorship to an era that was expected to be more democratic. And it was a women's group, not a women's group, sorry, that's plural, women's group, not students, that was the first to demonstrate against the military regime. They were called Suara Ibu Peduli, or the Voice of Concerned Mothers, who demonstrated on February 23rd in 1998. I was one of them, and the SIP, was it called SIP, Suara Ibu Peduli, triggered by concern due to rise of social unrest, acts of violence, soaring prices of basic necessities. And this was the case for the transition from the new order to the reform era in 1998. There were the May riots, which were triggered by the death of 4 students. Sorry, it says the internet connection is unstable. Which was a powder keg due to accumulation of social, economic, and social pressures, much uncertainty, and the use of violence to suppress dissent, rampant corruption, and exorbitant prices, etc. There was, I don't know if you remember this, it was really scary. This was in the mid-May. It became a war zone where mobs were destroying property and looting. There were deaths of many people, from 500 to 1,200, trapped in burnt department stores. It was the nadir of Indonesians' humanity. There were also riots in other cities, Medan, North Sumatra, Solo, and Central Java. And then there were the May rapes. The May rapes, which occurred in between the 13th and 15th May, were mainly targeting Indonesian women of Chinese origins. The rapes were a focal point for many aspects of the crisis, pulling together political, economic, social, and racial issues. Violence against women is always a misdirected victimization. It was a means to oversimplify an extremely complex crisis. It's also a kind of safety valve. Women's issues and movements are central to the history of the Reform era due to the fact that women's suffering and pain contributed to the birth of the Reform era. In the Reform era, the women's movement focused on two areas: political participation and violence against women. Okay, so there's a lot of issues, obviously, but the women's movement, this is what they focused on, participation. And at the policy level, there was the political party law, Undang-Undang Nomor 2 2011, and election law, that's the number there. And at the citizenship level, there was the formation of women's organizations and leaderships in social movements. The women's movement became alive, and the second was anti-violence against women. At the policy level, there was a law on domestic violence and trafficking and sexual violence. These laws were enacted at the time. And at the citizenship level, there were service institutions for victims, and the National Commission on Violence Against Women, better known as Komnas Perempuan, was set up. So that was the good thing that came out of it. Women were now engaged in political participation, and there were policy breakthroughs in the first half of the Reform era due to the centrality of women's experiences at the birth of the Reform era. In terms of women's political participation, there was the creation of a quota system and affirmative action in formal political institutions. And in 2002 and 2003, women gained legal guarantees for women's participation in political parties and elections. This opened the way for women activists to enter formal politics. And I saw many of my friends who were and NGO activists entered political parties and became MPs. So the result was a representation of women in parliament. But even though there was this quota of 30%, it never reached 30%. In the last three elections, in 2009, there was 18%, in 2014, 17%, and 2019, the highest was only 20%. In fact, Indonesia ranks 7th out of 10 ASEAN countries in Southeast Asia. Quotas can never be a fulfillment of substantive standards for true representation in the end. Okay, now I want to elaborate a little bit on the anti-violence against women. Law on the elimination of domestic violence was passed in 2004. There was an immediate backlash. Political groups had launched massive rejection at the countered legal draft, the compilation of Islamic law. You can ask me a question about that later. Porno action and anti-pornography law was passed in 2008. It wasn't about pornography, but as a means to control women's behavior and sexuality. The anti-sexual violence bill was proposed since 1912, but despite the violence, it was passed to law in 2022. So it took 10 years. Islamists proposed something. This is a backlash, the Family Resilience Bill. They said to counter free sex and LGBT, because they said the anti-sexual violence bill was made it possible for free sex and LGBT. I don't know where or how they get this idea from. So as I mentioned earlier, there's this backlash from Islamists. And since 2004, the Indonesian women's movement has faced opposition from Islamist social and political movements. These Islamist promote the standardization of Islam as a system for regulating political, economic, and social life. They carry out populist measures targeting women as well as LGBTIQ and the control of sexuality as a means of political mobilization. Legal products promoted by the women's movement are taken over by the Islamists, like the quotas, or they're taken over, like the quotas are taken over. The law is ignored, and the bill on sexual violence was thrashed. Now, at the citizenship level, things were more promising. They experienced, the women's movement experienced a diversification, merging with other social movements, the environment, agrarian, labor, adat or tradition, LGBTIQ, and includes young people. There was a critical education and feminist movements at grassroots level, including awareness of women's history and politics in general. There was a rise of Islamic feminism. Various NGOs which include male Islamic feminists. And this is something that really is very heartening, which was the friendly collaboration between secular and Muslim feminists, which occurred since 1998. It is due to the May rapes. Before that, they were always at loggerheads, and they were criticizing each other. But then since the beginning of the reform era, there was this friendly collaboration. The Nahdlatul Ulama, which was the largest Muslim social organization in Indonesia, recently included 11 women in their leadership, the first time in almost 100 years. Okay, so now I would like to introduce my Gender and Democracy Center. In December 2021, I set up the Gender and Democracy Center of LP3S, which stands for the Institute for Research, Education, and Information of Social and Economic Affairs, and became its director. The LP3S itself was founded in 1971, so 51 years ago, which is 1971 was the year that I started to write, that I started to become known as a writer. It's one of the biggest and most well-respected NGOs in Indonesia, but have not included gender balance and a gender perspective in the 50 years of their existence. So, so even though it's considered LP3S is considered democratic, but it's still patriarchal. The GDC was officially launched on the 28th of December 2021 with a webinar called Gender Equality as a Prerequisite for a Just, Prosperous, and Strong Society. I provide the link if you want to watch it. It's in Indonesian, of course, and it conducts monthly webinars on various feminist issues. The message that I would forward is that feminism is integral to democracy, because even men who consider themselves democratic don't get it. Then the context of this is democracy in decline globally. There's a rise of populism and oligarchs, the effect of COVID-19, climate crisis, war in Ukraine and many areas, refugee crisis, which is a setback for men and girls. Just now I was talking to the Swedish ambassador, who is a close friend of mine, and because I read that the far right is around in Sweden, which is a shock. But she said they were expecting it for a long time, and this is in fact happening everywhere in France, in Germany, in the UK, and of course in the US. The main thrust of the GDC is to show that feminism is needed as an integral and fundamental part of the democratization process, and to recover from the various crises the world is facing. The challenges: deeply entrenched patriarchal mindsets, rising conservatism, reactionary interpretation of Islam, and well, actually I should mention here climate crisis, which is also to do with a patriarchal, masculinist way of looking at the world, of running the world. So the GDC is still in embryonic stage and currently building its organizational foundation, because there's also patriarchal mindsets within. Okay, the plans and programs is organizational of the GDC are organization development, fundraising, raising gender awareness, gender mainstreaming, advocacy training, research on important but neglected issues that have a bearing on women's lives, especially in these times of crisis. And I mean gender mainstreaming within the organization. The perspective that I will take are political, sociological, historical, grassroots, and I forgot to put in here religious also, because Islam has a very great bearing on everything that happens in Indonesian society at the moment. We are also going to make research-based publications, and we want to collaborate with both national and international organizations to maximize impact, effectiveness, and outreach. So if any of you want to collaborate with us, please let me know. I wish us luck. Thank you. That's it.
Can I just sit there for a minute?
Yes, of course.
Hi, all.
Yeah.
Maybe Pamungkas has already raised hand. Pamungkas.
Has what?
Pamungkas has already raised hands.
Oh, right. Ibu Arita, can I ask you to manage the questions, because we only have one laptop here, so it'll be easier if you can.
Yeah. Mr. Pamungkas, you can ask directly to the keynote speaker. Please, would you please, Pamungkas? Bapak Pamungkas. Hello, Bapak Pamungkas. You can ask directly to the keynote speaker.
Why don't you pull up a chair beside me so that you can?
It's easier if Ibu Arita does it. If we've lost,
Bapak Pamungkas maybe is not here.
Right. Okay.
Oh. Okay. I think I would like to ask some question.
Yes.
Julia, thank you for the fruitful presentation. I would like to ask, there are some evidences in Indonesia related to the strengthening of women's roles in the society. However, gender equality in Indonesia hasn't been achieved optimally, I think. What is your opinion about the best strategy to allow the women to push for more room for participation in public decision-making institutions? Thank you.
Wow. That's $1 million question. Yes, I mean that is the whole point. I think that is the question that I mean, you could write lots of. In fact, that's what I'm partly planning to do. This is what my gender center is about also. But basically, we have always been a very patriarchal society, and actually, a few days ago on the 10th, I gave a talk at a webinar called Delusions of Gender, and my presentation was about patriarchy. Patriarchy is in fact quite relatively new. It's only been around for 10,000 years, but and for hundreds of thousands of years before that, it was society was relatively equal. So obviously something happened which made the patriarchs take control, and once they've taken control, it's very hard. Now everything, all social institutions in society are patriarchal. The family, education, religion, social, cultural, and even technology. Like for example, women are not don't predominate in STEM and STEM. Science, technology, what does the E stand for? and maths, engineering and maths. It's predominantly considered a male domain, and women occupy the softer sciences, and this is not true. It's actually very dehumanizing because it doesn't. Men and women are actually more equal, and there's no biological basis for the difference between men and women. But this is used all the time, and the thing is, now that your question was how do we become a more feminist society? Actually,
Yes.
Because that would mean actually a more democratic society. That if a democratic society means it takes into consideration not just men and women, but also the poor, the marginalized, like for example, religious and sexual minorities. Like in Indonesia, LGBT groups are always persecuted and not considered, almost considered not human. And there is nothing actually in religion which says that it's against Islam to be LGBT. So the government has done a lot actually. For example, there is in the year 2000 there has been gender mainstreaming. I'll just tell you what has been done. Okay, so the government has in 1978, I said there was the women's ministry, which was actually more instrumental to their own developmental needs. But in the year 2000, already in the reform era, there was gender mainstreaming. Okay, we've CEDAW, we've ratified CEDAW in the 1980s, and gender mainstreaming is supposed to be implemented since 2000. And this is probably one of the research that I want to do, is to what extent has this actually been the case? And then various laws have been enacted, but it's more the societal attitude, the mindset, that is much harder to overcome. Because I was talking about gender ideology. Gender ideology is one of the things that is, ideology is subconscious. It's like your conscious mind is the tip of the iceberg, and the subconscious mind is submerged. But it controls your behavior much more than you think. And gender ideology is very much like that. So somebody, a man, an educated man who has a PhD, can consider himself to be very progressive and gender conscious, but and he says he supports his wife, but he actually, what he does subconsciously, he's putting down other women, he engages in sexual harassment, and he doesn't even realize he's doing it, you see? And so this is, and when it comes to, unfortunately, it's also to do with the interpretation of religion. This is another thing that in civil society, the emergence of Muslim feminists is something that is a very good thing, because they provide interpretations of the Quran, of the Hadith and fiqh, which are feminist. I have been following them, and it's quite amazing. And in 2017, there was the KUPI, Kongres Ulama Perempuan Indonesia, the Women's Ulama Congress, which is the only one in the world. So Indonesia is really ahead in many ways in terms of feminist consciousness. And then in this year, they're going to have the second KUPI in November and the first one was in Cirebon, and the second one will be in Sang and somewhere else, Jepara, I think. I don't remember, but anyway, 2 places. The one I remember is in Semarang. So a lot is being done, to change people's mindset. So if you ask what needs to be done, I think the main thing is changing people's mindsets, because in terms of the laws, the institutions, they're there. They do exist. So now it's just a matter of changing the mindset, which is the most difficult. I think that's all I can say for now.
Thank you very much. Julia, maybe there is Dorothy for University College London. Would like to ask you a question, please, Dorothy? Would you like to ask the keynote speaker directly? Dorothy?
The mic is muted. Maybe.
Oh yeah, Baidan, would you like to unmute?
Somebody can turn it on.
To unmute Dorothy. Baidan, would you like to unmute?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's ready.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello,
Yes.
All right.
We can hear you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm a big fan of yours. I'm a lecturer at University College London, and my research is on higher education and gender. So I really like your work. I actually have your book. So my question is, how would you situate the state IBUISM, or you propose a new term, the Islamic IBUISM? How would you situate that in the international development context? For example, with the gender in development, woman in development, woman and development, and gender and development. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's quite a tough question. How do I situate it? I think that as I said, now religion is becoming much more pronounced in it's not just in Indonesia, but also in the US, for example, the anti-abortion. So it's not just I think what you should ask is not just about Islamic IBUISM, but also this conservatism with regards women's rights, which is often justified by religious beliefs. And because you're asking in the international context, like for example in the US, recently there was the versus Wade, right, was overturned, and that's about abortion. And it's really, really weird, because how people are against these people are against abortion, but what it does, if women are forced to have their babies when they can't, for example, if they're raped, or if it's a young woman, then it puts them, the whole family, into poverty, because and into a situation where they won't be able to raise their child properly, because if it's a young woman, who is still effectively a child or a teenager, is not able to take care of herself. How can she be expected to take care of her? And there's so many other examples with this anti-abortion thing, or they say pro-choice, and this is happening worldwide, I think, and it's also about for the COVID pandemic. Okay, there's been these restrictions that it's made it possible for governments to impose restrictions that the populace wouldn't otherwise not be willing to accept, right? Putting on masks and working at home, and then the division of labor at home. The one good thing about it is that now there's this dualism between private and public is or work is no longer so sharp because people work at home. Previously the home used to be considered just a place for reproduction, not for work. So we're really entering a very, very difficult time in human history, and actually what I'm doing is I'm broadening your question, because just looking at the various issues, it's not you said development, right? For example, there's the COVID pandemic, the climate crisis. All of these have an impact on the status of women. They're all very a setback for women. It's not just religion, and religion is just is often used to justify the measures to control women. And as there was this French philosopher Charles Fourier, he said that the indicator of society is development of a society is the women, is the status of women. So, and now the status, there's trafficking, child trafficking, child pornography, all of these things. So it's really ironic, how you use religion is used as to justify this restriction, but then on the other hand, there's all these other things which are happening, which clearly repress women, and use and abuse women, like trafficking and pornography and all that stuff. So it's a very hypocritical society we live in. Do you want to?
Thank you, Julie.
Okay.
Would you like to, Dorothy? Is there any answer? Is there any question related to?
Are there any questions in the chat box?
No, there is no more. But maybe there are two audiences would like to ask the question. Budina?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you can ask directly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, the moderator. Hello, Miss Julia. I'm Dina. I'm very happy to meet you. Is my voice clear?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, thank you. Mbak Julia, a few years ago when I was working at Rahima, I'm still single at the time. I was with Mbak Farha Cici, Mbak Ade Eridani, visit your unique house in
Cinere.
In Cinere, yeah, that's right. I hope you still remember me. At that time, I'm still single, and I'm right now have 5 kids, Mbak Julia.
Oh my God!
Yes, I got it. So
should I say congratulations?
Thank you. I'm student. I'm student in UNJ right now. Okay, Mbak Julia. My research.
I can still be a student.
Yeah. My research plans discusses about family resilience and the criteria for mothers who can jumpstart Indonesian superior generations. My question is, do the roles of mothers and fathers in educating each generation have a fair share, or is that a more dominant role for mothers, considering many doctrines or jargon such as a mother is the first school, women are the pillars of the state? I do with your opinion, please. Thank you so much.
Well, I think that if you know, do you remember what Hillary Clinton said? There are two things that she said which are important. One is that women's rights are human rights. This was in the 1995 Women's UN Women's Conference in Beijing, which I attended. And the other thing that she said, I'm not a big fan of Hillary Clinton, but there are some things she said which are good. She said it takes a village. Okay, it takes a village to educate a child. So it's not just the mother and the father. Of course, I mean, we are assuming that there is a mother and a father. In Indonesia, let me just use Indonesia as an example. The number of women-headed households is quite big. And this was not recognized in the New Order. And then in the year 2000, an NGO was set up, PK, Perkumpulan Perempuan Kepala Keluarga. So, you know, women, because there are many janda. Janda is a divorcee or a widow. And in some areas, the level of women, the number of women-headed, percentage of women-headed households is quite high. It's like 25%, you know, due to desertion, divorce, whatever. But in situation like that, I think it's you know, everybody is involved in raising a child, in raising children. Actually, not just even the. I mean, I only have one child, a son, and I remember that I wanted many people to be involved in his upbringing, you know, not just his grandmother, but also his aunts and my friends. There were even friends who played a role in his upbringing. So, and there's the whole neighborhood, right? So I think the answer to that is it takes a village. So you can't just have a man and you know, a husband and a father and a mother, but it's the whole community has a role in raising children. So it depends on what kind of community you live in, you know, which is that's the problem. How many questions more are there?
Pamungkas, would you like to ask the keynote speaker directly? Pamungkas or Silvana?
I think he's not.
Okay.
I think maybe
it is awesome. And I'm so proud to meet you today. Mrs. Julia, I'm curious, when you live abroad for a long time, studied there as well, but in the end you return in Indonesia with all the confusion and differences between the value of society and what you believe. Why did you choose to remain an Indonesian citizen?
That's a very good question. I actually wrote about that in my last column. My last column was about this historian who was like me. He was educated abroad. I was even born abroad. I was conceived in Penang and born in India. So, which is quite a rare thing, to know where you're conceived. And you know, and I was brought up in Europe. I think from the very beginning, I don't know how to explain it really. It wasn't something that my parents instilled so much in me, but it was just something, a consciousness I had since I was a child, since I was like maybe 10. I saw this picture book for kids. About there were people building a highway, and I said to myself, I am going to build highways for Indonesia. This was when I was about 10, and now I am building highways, but for knowledge, not physical highways. I mean, I can leave that to Jokowi and his administration. He can do the infrastructure development. I'm not. into that, which is also important also. So it's just, I don't know, it's just something that I had a commitment to. I've had a very strong sense of mission since I was a child, to be to serve my country. And yeah, I'm really glad to be in Indonesia, to be Indonesian and to live in Indonesia, because also now in this time of crisis, Indonesia is one of the bright spots. I don't remember, was it the World Bank or somebody? I read a statement somewhere that Indonesia is one of the bright spots in the world, in the world which is fraught with crisis. And also in my old age, I'm 68 now. I don't like the cold, and living in the tropics is perfect for me. And now I've lived in Puri Cinere for 31 years, and I've been neighbors with Bahaiwal, and it's my little piece of heaven. So yeah, so that's it. I guess that's all I can say. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Julia.
Bahaiwal says
Thank
I think
you.
time is up.
Okay.
17:24. So thank you very much
Yeah.
for all your questions. I wish we could chat some more, but anyway, maybe there'll be another opportunity. Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay, thank you very much, Julia. Thank you very much. I will comment.
Yeah, thank you to everybody, and thank you for your patience while we struggled with the technological problems. The next session will be 4 weeks from now, and the speaker is called Prem Phyak. He comes from Nepal, but he's lecturing at the University of Hong Kong, and he's a very, very productive researcher. He publishes a huge amount. So he will be our next speaker. Thank you, Ibu Arita.
Yeah,
Pak
thank
Dedi,
you, Haiwa.
Rector, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, until we meet again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all participants. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wow.